the workplace, and what is potentially needed by graduates moving forward and moving into the workforce. Just for my benefit, can I get a quick show of hands? Who here is a student? Okay. Who here is faculty, teaching? Okay, a couple. Who here is both? I like to think we're all students. I like to think we're all always learning. Okay, thank you. So, if technology doesn't fail me, or the user doesn't fail the technology. Here we go. I'd like to start here and acknowledge that I think we're at a time of massive change. We just heard in the opening, we have cloud technology, we have security concerns, we have policy concerns. And as I mentioned, we have the rapidly changing workforce. We have students that are coming into universities such as this one here and looking for a different learning experience and a different outcome. And this is a massive intersection and a time of change, but I think it's the new norm. I think it's something I mentioned we're kind of always all learning. To a degree, we're going to need to get used to and be able to adapt to this constant state of change. Universities, I remember they used to have 20-year plans and they'd execute them. I think that's no longer the norm. 5 years is a stretch. How do we drive planning cycles? How do we drive cycles to meet the needs of a workforce over 2 or 3 years, to meet the needs of our graduates as the pace of change accelerates? And I think change is absolutely the new norm. And one of those changes we're seeing is industry. And we heard the fourth industrial revolution mentioned earlier. I won't give you a history lesson. But the reason I bring this up is this is not the first time we've seen significant change. Okay, steam power, moving from horse-drawn carts, steam power, electricity, IT that we're all used to. And we're now coming into this fourth industrial revolution. I don't think any of us really know what that's going to mean, but the one thing we're certain about is it will drive change. But let's put this into context. Again, not a history lesson. So for some reason here, we'll look back here. This is Brooklyn, New York in the late 1800s. What do we see? I was told you guys weren't shy. Anything stand out? Horse? That was a cheat. That was a Microsoft person. Horses, horse-drawn carriage. The mode of transport in the late 1800s in the US and globally was horse-drawn carriage. Around 20% of the food grown in the US alone was to feed horses for transport. Tens of thousands of people were employed in New York City alone to clean up after horses. Fast forward just 20 years. Sorry, guys. We'll fast forward 20 years. What don't we see? Horses? The horses are gone. The modality of transport has changed. An industrial revolution. Tens of thousands of jobs have just disappeared. 20% of the food grown in the US is now no longer needed for horses. The beauty here was this was a change over 10 to 20 years. We're seeing similar changes happening now in the space of 2, 3, 5 years. It's a different world we're living in. And this world is where we're coming to is this fourth industrial revolution. As I said, I don't want to give you a history lesson here or go into the details, but there's 3 key takeaways defining the fourth industrial revolution. That is the coming together of the physical world. Okay, new materials, autonomous vehicles, things that only a couple of years ago was science fiction and now are absolutely reality. From drones, Singapore is just trialing their first taxi service via flying drone, an autonomous flying drone. The pace of this change is rapid and it's very real. The medical world, precision medicine, the ability to take a DNA sample, have it analyzed and sent back to you or to your doctor and have a health professional understand what you're predisposed to in terms of genetically, diseases, reactions you might have to medication. We can really be very precise and very structured and very predictive on medical treatments now, fundamentally changing the role of a healthcare professional. Again, thinking about what that means for health students today. We're going to go into a world where this technology is available. And lastly, one that's probably closer to the heart for those of us at Microsoft is the digital revolution. Yes, there's some buzzwords here: connectivity with IoT, blockchain, artificial intelligence, which I'd like to spend a little bit of time on today, and that being driven by big data. Augmented reality, something that's very, very real. I think we just released Minecraft World in Australia this week. Who here's played Pokemon Go? A few hands. Don't be shy. I haven't played it myself, but yeah, this is augmented reality, virtual reality extending into our world, into everyday use cases, and we're going to see more and more of it. And the reason these things are fueling the fourth industrial revolution is the phenomenal rate of change in technology. Okay, and this is not the first time we've been talking about artificial intelligence or AI. Okay, this has been something that has been theorized for decades. We've had a couple of goes at it, a couple of failures at it. But we're in a different place now, and that different place is driven by three big trends. They are the access to data. Big data is a buzzword, but the unbelievable explosion of data that is available. And there's a saying you may have heard that data is like the new oil. It's only of value when you refine it, when you get insights from it, when you can do something with the data. And that's where the processing comes in. The fact we have access to enough compute now and will into the future be able to create those insights to drive things like machine learning and AI. I don't think we're quite at AI yet, to be honest. We have elements. We have some very, very smart machines. I think it's very easy to see what is potentially on the horizon as well. Let's put some of this back into context. As I said, we've failed at this before. Who knows what that is in the top left-hand corner? This one's not as easy as horses. Hard disk, yeah. That was portable storage. I wouldn't like to guess the cost of the storage in the mid-50s, but that would have been a couple of bytes, I would say, being moved. Fast forward to where we are today, and we're talking about DNA storage. I'll show you in a moment a couple of projects that Microsoft is working on to solve the storage problems. The storage problem that is being created by ourselves. The first human genome, about 750 meg of storage. I think we sequenced the first genome about 12, 15 years ago. Come forward, the Large Hadron Collider you may have heard of. 15 petabytes a year of data we're building, we're needing to store. We're working at the moment, Microsoft, with the square kilometre array. There's one of these in Australia, in the outback. It's a square kilometre telescope. They simply do not know how they are going to store all the data they're collecting. We're working closely with them to try and store and then help process 1 million petabytes a year. Just wanted to share that to put into context this explosion of storage and some things we're trying to do about it. These are a couple of research projects that Microsoft are working on. Quartz-based storage. The University of Southampton, how can we use essentially quartz or glass to store data? I think even more exciting is the encoding on DNA with the University of Washington. How to encode, and more importantly, how to decode and get access to that storage. Exponentially growing the storage capacity and the portableness and the ability to share that storage. And then what does the data center of the future look like? How do we make sure this is sustainable? How do we keep up with this growth? We're putting data centers underwater at the moment to try and see how we can be more efficient and drive reducing the footprint of data centers moving forward. So that's that data side, that storage side, of which is crude. We need to do something with it. So let's look at compute. What's happening in the compute space? And I've heard the word cloud a couple of times this afternoon already. Looking back here, who remembers the movie? The new Titanic. It's probably nearly 20 years ago now, the new Titanic came out. At this time, this is what a teraflop of computing power looked like. 70 million US dollars, probably filled a room like this. I'd hazard a guess a couple of governments and military would have had access to this type of computing power. Let's fast forward. Just under 20 years. Well, it doesn't seem like that long ago. My children today have access to this type of computing power in our lounge room. This is not an advert for an Xbox, but it's highlighting how accessible computing power is at a personal entertainment level, let alone what's happening at a data center or cloud computing level. Ultimately, the exponential growth in computing power is going to run out of steam. Is anybody familiar with Moore's law? The theory that computing power doubles every 12 months or every 2 years? Satya Nadella, our CEO's view is that is simply running out of steam. We are going to outstrip that growth, and we're going to need to do that to realize some of the benefits of AI. So Microsoft, amongst others, is not only looking at advancing cloud computing, but we're very interested to see how we can solve the quantum computing challenge. There's a lot of announcements coming out of late. It's not just Microsoft that is working on this. We've partnered with a number of tech giants on this. What I want to do is share with you a very brief video that I think nicely describes the potential of quantum computing.
When we talk about quantum computing, it's a completely different game.
Quantum computing will enable us to solve problems that currently take longer than the lifetime of the universe in seconds, hours, or days.
We completely reconceive the space in which we do computation.
Quantum computing is like going from falling to going to it's different.
It's only natural that we would want to use the world's most powerful device to combat the world's most challenging problems.
We can tackle warming.
Security,
What are the boundaries of machine learning?
fighting diseases, the possibilities of quantum computers are endless. Microsoft has the best and the brightest working on this problem.
It's really happening. Progress is very fast. We're building a quantum computer.
What the world wants to know is what happens when we turn the machine on.
What problems will be solved with a computer that computes in a billion parallel universes at the same time?
I like the takeaway there that it will be like taking computing power from crawling to space travel. That's the difference that we're going to see when we can solve the quantum computing challenge. Which is very positive potentially, but it leads to this kind of thought. Terminator 2, Judgment Day, the rise of the machines, what will they do? I think there is a lot of fear around, a lot of uncertainty around what we will be able to do with AI, but I think there's a massive amount of potential when done correctly. I'm very fortunate to work for a company where our CEO's view is not what can a computer do, it's what should a computer do. And we live by that. And product philosophy is how we design and what we're trying to do with AI. But at the same time, it's how do we empower, you may have heard our company mission, to empower every person on the planet and every organization to achieve more. And one of the ways we're trying to do that is through the democratization of AI. To not just make this available to those that have access to a supercomputer, but how do we give access and the potential benefits of AI to every single person? So to do that, let's look back. Let's look at the growth of AI and machine learning at Microsoft. Microsoft Research was formed back in the 1990s. We've been working on different types of machine learning since then. For a long time, you possibly never would have realized some of the spam filtering, some of the search capabilities. It's AI, it's machine learning. Who here has an Xbox by any chance? I'm not judging you. The Xbox Kinect sensor, that was AI. Being able to control a machine with your body. Who uses Windows 10? A few more hands, this is getting better. Windows Hello, unlocking a machine with your face. That's AI. Okay, you'll see. Skype Translator. The ability to take my accent and put it into text is pretty good, I think. And we're seeing this not only transcription, but translation. And I'll show you some of the advancements we've made there in a moment. Things like PowerPoint Designer and Presentation Coach, built directly into tools like Office 365 and PowerPoint that we know and hopefully love, is AI capabilities, helping you design your presentations. So at the most basic level, this is where we're seeing AI delivered through the products that we are selling, through to platforms that our partners are building for you to take advantage of. But we want to do a little bit more there. We're building a whole stack of what we call cognitive services. This is where I say we have elements of AI that are realized and working today. And you often ask, but is it any good? Does it work? And to me, these are in these areas, we work on vision, speech, language, knowledge, search, and a whole lot of lab services that are running at the moment. I won't spend a lot of time here, but as we talk about the speech service, I said, taking my spoken word, putting it in a text, out of the box in PowerPoint. We can then take that and translate it into 60 different languages. Each of you could be choosing what language you want to be listening to this in, potentially. We build it into Microsoft Teams. It's in preview now that every Teams viewer can choose the language in which they want to listen. Think of that for accessibility, for closed captioning, for those with varying levels of ability of hearing. We build on that, not only language and speech, we can do that with vision, understanding what's in an image, recognizing objects, and moving beyond just taking the spoken word into written word, but using the knowledge services and actually understanding what the content of a document is. Allowing machines to learn and build knowledge. And as I was mentioning earlier, does it work? We put this to the test. Back in 2016, it's not about being perfect necessarily. In 2016, we were able to reach parity with a human to recognize objects in a video. Seat, person, face, light. We can do that in real time now. You're seeing that coming through in autonomous vehicles around the world, that type of technology. Human speech recognition through the switchboard test was met. We can transcribe spoken word into text as well as a human being. Then taking that one step further and providing the translation services. And lastly, I mentioned those knowledge services. We can comprehend at nearly an equal level to a human being reading. And with this, we are building momentum with people building onto these tools. There's 1 million developers using our cognitive services today for object recognition. Attendance, security, those types of services are being used today. There's a whole lot of potential for what they could be used for as well. And we're working with organizations to understand where that barrier is, where privacy is kept in check. We have the speech recognition, 60 languages, machine translating, and knowledge services, over 35 trillion documents. It's a pretty smart machine that we're building. But the beauty here is these are all available to you. The services I listed earlier as APIs. You don't need to be able to code to access them and use them. We provide sample code where you can go and use them as an API call. Interact with them, bring them into your platform, bring them into your service, use them to solve the problem that you have, and democratizing access to people to use this technology. It's one of the number of things we're doing at Microsoft to really reduce the barrier to entry to leverage technology. But moving on, I spoke earlier about the change this type of technology will have on the workplace. What is the workplace that you are potentially moving into going to look like? And there's a study done by a TEDx futurist, Thomas Frey. And his study identified that there will be 2 billion jobs disappearing due to the impact of AI by the year 2030. 2 billion jobs. Kind of sounds scary. Personally, though, I'm an optimist. I think this creates more opportunity than it does problem. And we did a study at Microsoft just across Southeast Asia for the impact on jobs. And we very much found it to be a story of transformation, not necessarily displacement or unemployment. Yes, some jobs will go. We found the majority was the transformation of jobs and roles that are needed, creating higher order jobs for people, building on domain expertise that people have, but augmenting that with technical capability. ability to harness technology and do more. And just last month, we released a study on the impact of AI and really looked at people's perceptions and concerns. And there was a concern around productivity, that only high-income countries would realize the benefits of productivity through AI. And we found that was very much false. Low to middle-income countries have the largest opportunity to thrive thanks to the productivity gains of AI. At a similar time, the sectors that would benefit were very much not just digital sectors. A number of not industries that would come to mind have huge productivity gains that can be achieved with AI. Incomes. The concern that machines will do all the smart jobs and we'll be left with the mundane was found to be very untrue. It's most likely that people will be able to move on to higher order jobs. And it's not just those that maintain their jobs that will see the benefits of wage growth. And again, it's not just low to middle wage jobs that will be hardest hit by AI. There's opportunity for everyone was what we identified. And lastly, around worker well-being, satisfaction and job safety. We found both of those would receive a positive impact through the use of AI, which is great news. And again, this very much went against the perception of nearly everybody that we studied here. We do have this data for South Korea. I would happily share it with you as well. The other big change in the workforce, and I think this one hits us here as an institution level, we have, when interviewed across Southeast Asia, across approximately 1,500 universities we spoke to, and kind of try to understand, do you feel your graduates are ready for the workforce? I'll be honest, over 70% of universities said, yes, our graduates are ready for the workforce. Yet when we speak to employers, unfortunately, the number one barrier they have to driving their own digital transformation or technical transformation is human resources. Only around 40 to 45% of employers or students felt that graduates today in Southeast Asia, or Asia as a whole, are ready for the workforce. And that's a disconnect that we're trying to look to understand and help with. And I think if we come to university, what we want to get out of our education has changed. I know it's different in every country than what we're looking for, but there's a fundamental change here. And I think it links to the change in the workforce. This is a diagram we've used for a number of years on changes in enterprise organizations. Diagram on your left traditionally has represented a hierarchical workforce. CEO makes a decision. It's pushed down through middle and line management. Task workers do. Very industrialized, very productivity driven. What we're seeing is a massive and rapid shift to this on the right. 1 + 1 cannot equal 2 anymore. Disruption, transformation, doing more with less. And this is the way we work at Microsoft. Most multinationals will work this way. I will see this shift coming in Korea as well. Fred will talk later a bit more about the specifics here in Korea. But this is teamwork. This is collaboration. This is communication. This is working in a completely different style to what we did 5 or 10 years ago. And it's requiring a different set of competencies and skills to do so. And where we're seeing the most success is where education systems make this same change. We move away from this sage on the stage, this holder of knowledge in the educator, disseminator of knowledge to students. A time when ultimately progress in an institution can be held back by the educators. Moving to this on the right, where the role of an educator fundamentally changes. I'm not saying get rid of teachers or lecturers at all. This is a conversation about role changing, facilitating learning, unlocking people, enabling collaboration, enabling problem solving. Different countries, different institutions, different educators do this to varying degrees. But the more we see education moving to that on the right, the quicker we're seeing the adoption and the success moving into the workforce. And as I said, some of the key themes here are these skills in graduates. And these skills are lifelong skills. And the ability to communicate and collaborate, problem solving, critical thinking. By computational thinking here, I don't mean that you can code. I mean you can think logically, processes, solve problems. I think the creativity is a huge element that's missing as well. Now, I was talking to a colleague of mine in Singapore just recently, and she's got a daughter who just graduated a university in Singapore, quite prestigious university. And we have this assumption of she's come out, she's into the workforce, and she's well set up. And her name's Michelle. I said, Michelle, how's your daughter going? And she said, great, she's just come home, first week on the new job. And her feedback is, nothing I learned at university is relevant for my job. Has anyone here ever thought that before or said that before? I used to ask my teachers when I would use this in the future. I've learned that they were right some of the time as well. Don't get me wrong. But she did give the feedback there was a glaring disconnect between what she learned in university and what was needed in the workforce. Again, a statement I think we've all heard or made previously. But I asked her to give me a little bit more detail. Help me understand this. What does she mean by this? Now, Michelle's daughter was a business-trained marketer moving into a sales organization. And she felt her university needed to spend more time on technical know-how. Now, this could be interpreted many ways, but what I took from this was a need to be more comfortable with technology to move into the workforce. A big change from years gone by. Again, on technical know-how, she felt being able to use industry-specific software shouldn't just be a week-long undertaking. It should be a full term or a full course. Again, what I'm hearing is she moved into the workforce and needed to know how to use technology of some description. How do we make sure we are equipping these students with those skills, that ability to use that technology? Again, the business-trained marketer, she was lacking technical knowledge. We see this at Microsoft as well. This is not a historical problem, it's not an age problem, it's graduates of all ages. She did, however, acknowledge the collaborative nature of her university set her up well for the workforce. And this is one of my key takeaways here. The way learning was delivered, the way she learned, the old group work project that we get to do, having those skills was critical for her to succeed. Because at the same time, you guys are changing. I think for institutions to be aware of, and I think they're hyper aware, that students coming in expect a different experience today. College, university can be an experience. The outcome you want can be very different. Students are like me. I didn't go to university straight out of school. I've been working for a number of years before I went back to university. Students are learning online, reskilling, working adults, parents, trained professionals that are looking to change careers. We all know the stats on how many career changes people will probably have during their lifetime. Facilitating this for students is another great challenge for institutions. How do we solve all these problems of creativity, collaboration, keeping up with technology, agility, whilst our students are changing as well? I don't have all the answers. We'd like to show you some ways in which you can be more agile and be adapting to these types of changes. Because at the same time, you may have seen this term, that students are now deemed phygital. Students that cannot, or a whole generation that cannot distinguish between the physical and digital world. I have a 5 and a 7-year-old. Everything they do is digital. There's a saying that technology is anything that is developed after you were 30 years old. For my grandparents, that was a TV. For my parents, that was a remote control, maybe a toaster. For me, it's probably AI is what I deem as technology. What do students today think of as technology? That's all native to them. How do we not take away the language that they speak when they come into the classroom? How do we embrace what they already know, thinking back to that facilitator of learning, and unlock those skills and help them build on them? So we often are talking with institutions around how do we meet these demands of this rising tension that we've spoken about. And often it's around institutional transformation. As I said, we work a lot with enterprises around digital transformation. For me, at a university level, a system level, a schooling system level as well, this is not a digital transformation. It's not just about technology. Okay, it's changing what we can potentially do with technology to drive transformation. But don't worry if you're sitting here thinking, I don't know where we are on the journey. When we spoke to institutions across Asia again, in a study, just over half of universities felt they had a digital transformation strategy in place and were executing. Compare that with retail, finance, manufacturing, who are all over 65, 70%. So education is traditionally slower in driving transformation. How do we help pick up the pockets of that transformation that makes sense? This is probably not as relevant for everybody in the room, but I just wanted to share with you. At Microsoft, we have what's called the Education Transformation Framework. We have one for K-12 and schooling systems. We have one for higher education. This is the conversation we're generally having with universities, polytechnics, and understanding how we drive transformation across the campus. Yes, there are different silos here, but how do we unlock the potential of technology and change across all of these silos together? From student success, how do we make sure that students coming in are going to have that personalized learning journey to reach the outcome that they want? For some, it's a degree. For some, it's employability. For some, it's maybe a grade. There's many different versions of success. How do we make sure we tailor that journey to success? What's the teaching and learning environment look like? What are the skills that are needed? I've spoken about some of them earlier, and I'll spend a little bit more time on this pillar as we move forward for this afternoon. But at the same time, how do we look at the campus? We heard the term smart buildings, smart cities. What does the campus experience mean moving forward? Do we have space for traditional buildings? We're going to move all online. But how do we make sure that that's the most efficient and effective experience and tailored learning environments for students depending on what they're learning? And lastly, what do we do about academic research? How do we accelerate research with technology, with collaboration, and remove some of the barriers to continue to advance and take advantage of technology? But as I mentioned, I want to spend the next sort of 10 minutes in this teaching and learning space focused on a couple of these areas, really the future-ready skills part of this conversation, and then how we deliver that. And I'll give you some examples of how we've done that. Share with you some tools that you could pick up and take away today to get yourself started in this space. Because I'm hoping by now what I've shared with you is the world as a student that you are moving into is going to be technology-driven. You're probably well aware of that. It's likely to be AI-driven. How do we give you the skills to be comfortable in that world? How do we kickstart that learning for you today? At Microsoft, we've deemed this kind of future-ready skills, nice broad term, around building the skills for the future. And we do understand this moves across differing levels of education. As I mentioned before, the communication, collaboration, this is lifelong. I'm still learning some of this stuff. I think many of us in the room would understand that we are still building these skills and capabilities, and we will forever. But as we move up, what does this look like from a digital perspective? We work on digital literacy, productivity, office specializations. I mean, here in Korea, that's a big thing. The amount of people that get certified in competencies of Microsoft Office in Korea is astounding, because it's that acknowledgement that not only that I can demonstrate that I understand how to use technology to be more effective, but how do we move beyond things like just the Office suite? Let's look at ethics of technology, cloud computing, and role-based skills for the roles that you may be moving to in the future. And as usual at Microsoft, we've got a lot. We kind of joke internally of how many programs that we have on offer, how many different ways you could learn a Microsoft product or a Microsoft competency. Thankfully, over the recent years, we've started to really refine this. I'm going to focus on a couple here. Moving up, I mentioned the Office certifications, but we have a platform called MS Learn. I'll share some of that with you in a moment, but it's a one-stop shop for you to come and learn about any Microsoft technology. But we've evolved from you learning about how to use a product, you may remember the Windows Server certifications, to more of a role-based certification. How can I be an administrator on Microsoft Azure? How can I be a data scientist with the Microsoft toolset and some of the open source tool sets as well? It's very much focusing on the role that you're looking for rather than the product or technology. Building that up, I'm going to share with you some Azure tools and lab services that you could be using as well to drive this learning. Now, I mentioned certifications and role-based certifications. And this was released about 6 months ago. Microsoft's new approach to certifications. This is just in the cloud infrastructure world. For everybody, we have the Azure fundamentals. It's the fundamentals of cloud. Yes, it has Azure on it. It's kind of the product name that we have, but there are modules there around cloud computing basics, around security principles for the cloud in general. They're not all Microsoft specific courses. I can't emphasize that enough whilst we do put a product name on there. This is the ability to somebody to go from zero to a fundamental knowledge of cloud services, thoughts of how they would use them in a production environment, what they could do from a business perspective, and removing the fear and barrier of how to get access to them. We then work up through an associate, then an expert level. Security, DevOps, architecture, then data science, AI, data engineers. I'm going to focus on these ones just for a moment to give you an idea of what these entail. I appreciate this is a little bit of an eye chart. We will share the content with you. But this is what a learning path looks like for a data scientist on Azure. You can start with the fundamentals. It's around 9 hours, 11 modules, a fundamentals course. We're working with a number of institutions to be able to offer these courses as part of curriculum. There's a certification at the end of that you can validate, a globally recognized certification that you have the fundamental skills to use Microsoft Azure. It's the cloud fundamentals. But then we build on that with various different tools for data handling, data manipulation, AI, different languages to become a data scientist or somebody that can use data science tools. I am not for a moment suggesting that this would potentially replace any data science course you had at any of your institutions. The reason I share this is we are trying to give students to take that theoretical knowledge and give them that practical application. Give access to the tools and technology to apply the theory to solve the problems that are identified in the classroom today with practical tools. To close that gap of readiness that employers are seeking. And I know you don't have them here, but who's heard of Grab taxis? Sort of Uber sold to Grab in Southeast Asia. Yeah, okay. So ride-sharing application, Grab, predominantly across Southeast Asia. Grab has just moved their platform to Microsoft, their cloud platform, some of AI security. They're using Microsoft's platform. And when we were talking to them, they said, look, when we have a graduate out of a university in the US, it's about 3 to 6 months before that graduate is ready to work on our platform and be productive when we hire them. In Southeast Asia, Asia more generally, it's around 9 to 12 months between hiring them being useful. How do we close that gap? Problem number one. Problem number two, we need more people. They're looking at 2,000 interns over the next 3 years. Interns alone. They cannot find a pool of talent to bring them in to advance their platform, to stay competitive and keep moving forward. We're working with Grab at the moment. We recently announced a Technology for Good partnership that has some other pillars. It's not just around fueling their workforce and driving their digital transformation. We've focused on tech for social impact, making sure drivers, families, low socioeconomic groups have access to technology from that basic digital literacy level up. There's a whole lot of work going on there. But we're working with them to partner with universities to make sure we can get this practical curriculum or practical modules into curriculum or in parallel to curriculum to accelerate the learning and the readiness of graduates as they're coming out of the institutions, to accelerate that pipeline of talent. And at the same time, we're partnering with Grab amongst other enterprise organizations to provide those internship opportunities, to provide the opportunities to solve problems, do hackathons, work on real life data. So again, we close that gap between theoretical and practical knowledge. We will continue to work on these learning paths and at the same time work on the certifications that go with them. They both will progress at the same rate. We've moved past this being a certification for Office 2016 to Office 2019. These will be always up to date. The certifications will be always up to date. We want to take that burden off you. And we want to allow students to have the opportunity to graduate with that recognized certification that is recognized globally. I mentioned here, this is the data science track. We have the data engineer track. We have an AI engineer track. We have a number of them. We released just last night at our Ignite conference a whole lot of certifications around our Power platform, Power Apps. Now, these are tools that are not necessarily targeted at computer science. Power Apps is a codeless way of developing applications that integrate with back-end systems like Dynamics, SAP, and the likes. There's a whole lot of courses available for non-IT users. The other vision we have for some of these modules is exactly that. How do we train those that are getting an MBA? How do we train those in social sciences to have the ability to do data analytics, to unlock the potential of some of this technology? This is from the learning side. From a tooling perspective, we're looking to democratize that access I spoke about earlier and embed this into as many, provide these skills to as many different majors as we can. We work with UC Berkeley in the US on a previous iteration of some of these learning programs. They integrated it into, I think, 60 different majors. I know in Malaysia, they're looking at data science and AI as a mandatory requirement for all majors in some universities as well. How do we make sure that every graduate has these skills? At the same time, how do we give you access to that technology? You may have your own curriculum. You may have your own content. You may just want to get a hold of it. That's fine. We have two offers. This is the Azure for Student offer. I'll jump to this one, Azure for Students. The previous one was the starter offer. For those of you over 18, no credit card required. As long as you have a university email address, you can sign up and get access to the tools today. You get $100 US in credit that is renewable annually whilst you're still enrolled in the university. There are over 25 services that you get free, chatbot services, some of the APIs, cognitive services that you get for free that you can continue to use. There's a whole lot of development tools that we give you access to and learning paths as well. Those are learning paths, the data science that I mentioned earlier, all integrated into the same platform. There's no cost for those. The only cost is if you wish to go and get certified. There's a one-off cost for the certification. The rest of it's all no cost. And if you leave the university, you can move this to a pay-as-you-go subscription if you wish. We do also have support for those that are moving into a startup environment. We have programs that provide credit for startups to get moving in the space as well. But lastly, what I wanted to touch on here is the Azure Lab services. We've spoken about, again, the need to do more hands-on learning. All of the MS Learn paths that I spoke about, any of those modules that have practical learning, we provide an environment in which you can do the practical learning. But what if you had courses that were outside of that? Java courses, programming, security. Microsoft has heard this need, and we've built a tool on Azure called Azure Lab Services. For those of you who don't know Azure, Azure has around 500 or 1,000 odd different services. This is just one of them. But it's a platform service to provide educators the ability to create a lab environment, control the compute and the spend on that compute and the access to that compute to certain students, certain cohorts, in a way that is natural for a learning environment, either via schedules or class rosters or many different ways, and provide templates for learning. So that a student can focus on learning the element they need to learn, not necessarily focus on standing up a lab. At the same time, educators can focus on the learning rather than going and setting up a lab or buying PCs. Students can access these labs from anywhere. All you need is a browser, and you can connect from your own device. I just want to share with you 3 case studies to kind of give you the idea behind this. DevRai University, they were looking to replace they had virtual servers running in their data center, pretty standard environment. And they were looking to give students more access to different learning spaces that they couldn't do in their environment. And they had the problems from IT that they wanted to lower the overhead, they wanted to scale, but they wanted the security of identity and authentication. Faculty wanted to change and adapt curriculum very, very quickly. They wanted to be flexible and wanted to be easy to set up and manage. You don't want to have a role simply to manage lab environments. And students wanted to access it from anywhere and be hands-on with their learning. Again, Michelle's daughter's story, wanted practical learning. So they went ahead with 2 pilots for 4 or 5 classes, looking at programming, databases, business, operating system. As you can see, many varying levels, and they're now moving to a nationwide adoption of this program. Azure Lab Services only went general availability at the start of this year, to give you some context. Edith Cowan University from my home country in Australia, in Perth. Again, they had a lot of virtualized lab environments, but they were looking to expand globally, Edith Cowan. They couldn't have every student come into the computer lab in a certain building. They wanted to give access to different types of technology anywhere in a more practical way. So they got over 30,000 graduates. They had an aging on-premises environment. They wanted to reduce costs and they wanted to provide that access. They've moved to Azure Lab Services. Instead of a more traditional VDI model, they're ecstatic with the results. And they're using it to teach a vast array of courses. They're actually very eager to talk to anyone who wants to understand the experience here. The last one I think is even a little closer to home, and I like this one personally. This is Asia Pacific University in Malaysia. They had a need, well, they had a space problem. Their labs were, physical computer labs were taking up space. They had a need to provide specialized hardware. For courses, they wanted to provide GPUs to people, for AI. They wanted to give specialized hardware, but they didn't want to have it sitting around doing nothing. They also wanted to take that collaboration ability around the lab environments and provide it to students. So they actually took an approach of combining Microsoft Teams and Azure Lab Services together. They said Azure Labs just needs a browser, Microsoft Teams, you embed that browser into Microsoft Teams. Educators were now able to do online learning with students. Students were able to get access to the labs anywhere, anytime, and get the specialized compute they needed without the institution having to buy it. The physical lab spaces were now repurposed into collaboration spaces to provide a better student experience. And you'll see the absolute transformation, and whilst maintaining cost control and predictability and saving money. Again, APU, I think, was a great example of bringing a number of these things together at the same time. The last case study I'll use is not lab specifically. This is just on Teams. Dr. David Kellerman from the University of New South Wales had a problem. His problem was he teaches a first year engineering subject, around 500 students in a cohort. That's now 1,000, thanks to being able to use Teams. His issue was, we spoke about those non-traditional students. He had a lot of students that didn't necessarily come to campus. He had a disengagement problem. Students that were not learning face-to-face, that were learning online or in a blended way, did not feel part of the learning community, and they were disengaging, leading to dropping out. If you don't pass David's course in the first year, you don't pass engineering at the University of New South Wales. It's fundamental. What David did was use Microsoft Teams to deliver a blended learning approach. Whether you are in the lecture hall or you are dialed in on a Teams device, mobile, PC, whatever, the learning content is the same. David builds the learning with you. It's all recorded. It's all available offline. What he's then done is created a collaboration environment where students anywhere can ask questions. We've gone from 500 to 1,000 students. Now, how do you answer that many questions in a live session? TAs are able to support. Teachers' assistants are able to support here, offer questions, answers live. Students can offer answers live. And they've then evolved this even further to use some of our AI and our bot technology. He now has a bot that has all the pre-required knowledge of his courses that can answer the questions for the students as well. Not only does the bot answer the question, the bot points the students back to the recordings where that content was covered, because the recordings have AI transcription on them, the recordings have the knowledge services over the top, so we can understand when a student asks a question about Newton's law, the bot can point to the recording of the session on Newton's law and where that's explained. So we're greatly scaling the learning that's offered, greatly personalizing the learning experience for the students and making sure that no student is left behind. Students are also continually able to learn anywhere, anytime. The great part is they're building those collaboration skills, those communication skills natively in the learning process. The last thing I'll touch on here around lab services is just a couple of ideas. I've mentioned a lot about data science and AI and the learning paths we have. These are some of the other things that are being used in Azure Lab Services. And the students, there's a safe playground for students to go and play. This environment costs a couple of dollars per hour to run. It's a safe environment, and we can do things there we potentially couldn't do in other places. This is one of my favorites. How do we do more advanced data science work? We have something called the data science virtual machine. It can be a Windows machine, it can be a Linux machine. It comes pre-packaged with all the tools for data science. I don't know if any of you have tried to stand up a virtual machine or a machine with all the tools you need to do data science. It's a bit of a nightmare. This takes what can be a day or 2 day long process for educators and templatizes it. Allows you to roll it out, clean up the environment instantly. Again, this is a few more dollars. We can give you GPUs. You can do a whole lot of advanced stuff on here without the need for specialized hardware, running it from a laptop, sitting in a cafe, wherever you want to be learning. And the last one here is just around shell scripting. Just how to get in a script, we can just give you a visual code platform that you could be running in. You don't even need a virtual machine necessarily. So I know we've got some more content this afternoon. We will talk a little bit deeper. If you are interested, you have a pilot in mind, please reach out to Sungwon from Microsoft or Yosin from Demal, please. You can go and create your first lab. Feel free to have a go. We'll share this slide and this content. And we have some example classes that are available. Now, as I said, we released a few new modules and learning paths overnight. And what I'm getting a lot of requests for is IoT. How do I'm building, universities building IoT curriculum, so I was just checking what's available. And I know how much we love coffee here in Korea. This is a new module that was just released. It's 1 hour. I'm going home to do this one personally. Learn how to manage your coffee machine with Azure IoT Central. If that's not the greatest marriage of technology in my personal life coming together, I don't know what is. So with that, I'll leave you with this quote, this thought. Nothing I've showed you today is out of the realms of possibility. All of the technology I've showed you is here today. Quantum computing is on the cusp. But everything else, the case studies I'm showing you, there are universities doing this today. There are students taking advantage of this today. There are enterprises that are transforming, looking for graduates with these skills. What I hope you're able to see is we want to give those skills to you. We want to provide access, democratize access to both the skills and the technology. Happy to help you in any way we can. The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. So I say thank you and happy to take any questions. Everyone's not that shy.
Do you have any questions? Okay.
If not, I'll head back.
Okay.
If not, I'll head back over.
So the way out to submit the survey, just to take the QR code, which is on the paper, introductory on the paper, and then you, after taking the QR code, you are redirected to the survey website. Okay, now we are going to start the second session. Second session's subject is O365. Before the event, we have some interview with the IGC staff members. They said some faculty members and also the students are interested in some helpful features other than Office features that you are generally know. So for example, when writing a report, they want to make a better report. In that case, they want to know how can they use Office 365, and also if there is some case you are collaborating with some departments or the teams, and then you want to know how can work efficiently by using SharePoint features, etc. So through this session, we want to take a look at how we can use the Office 365 in a practical way. So let me introduce the second session speaker, Mr. Fred from Microsoft. Please welcome Mr. Fred.
Good afternoon, guys. You guys can all hear me, right? Okay. So my name is Fred. I'm currently with Microsoft. And my job at Microsoft, is actually very simple, right? So I'm an account executive at Microsoft. My job is basically telling the customers, or telling students, telling professors, telling faculty members the truth, right? And the truth is, the world is changing, right? That means we need to change. And the presentation that I have for you guys today, after hearing that, I'm going to be coming into this Incheon campus with students, professors, faculty members. I thought about what truth do I need to tell these people, right? And one of the things that came to my mind is, to the students who are here, right? They're probably worried about, how am I going to get a job after this, right? And to the professors here, or the faculty members, as sad to say, as what Rob mentioned before in his earlier presentation, 2 billion jobs are going to disappear in the near future. So from the professor and the faculty's point of view, how do I keep my job? And also, as a responsible, professors being responsible for their student success, how do I guarantee my students success as they enter their workforce, as they enter the society? So I titled my presentation as Future of Work, right? Workplace Survival Guide. So the workplace itself is changing extremely fast, and I'm hoping to offer you guys some guidance on why you need to change, and if you do decide to change, how you should change. So before I get into my more in-depth content, so by the look of the faces here, I'm pretty sure most of you guys will recognize this, right? And anybody have any guess on what this is? And trust me, it's not what you guys think it is. Anybody? So going once, going twice? Right, so again, my hint was, it's not what you guys think it is, right? So this is actually an ITouch. The third generation ITouch that was released in 2007, right? So when this was released, from my own personal experience, I loved it, right? I used it every day, and I thought it was the most brilliant piece of technology that was invented. And as a consumer, it just became part of my personal life. Fast forward it 12 years, we have this, right? So in 2007, we were still kind of experimenting with these new pieces of technology. But 12 years later, what do we have? Everyone in this room, right, have one of these on the palm of your hands, right? Everybody has one. So what do you do with it? It literally controls everything about our life. And the benefits is, it speaks for itself, right? So you watch movies on it, you take pictures, you chat with your friends, in the States, you could do video chatting, and see, some people even could make movies out of it, right? So as a consumer, right, we have developed into very sophisticated beings, right? Being fully capable and being used to, by nature, of utilizing these advanced pieces of technology, right? But then, before going in again, another one, 2.1 million. Anybody have a guess on this number? 2.1 million. It's not money related or anything. What was that? User? Close. It's a very close. The people do actually use it. So this is actually the number of apps available on the Apple App Store today. 2.1 million apps. And to be honest, I think it's growing, right? Like, it probably grew into 2.2 million in the time this session was going on, right? So that kind of reinforces the fact that because we are becoming such smart users at the consumer side, the ecosystem itself is developing, right, on its own. We're supporting the ecosystem by continuously developing these apps and releasing it for the sake of our own convenience. So that reinforces the fact that consumers, right, as consumers, we became very smart and we are fully capable of using high tech and we want to use it, right? But let's step back a little bit. So, let me just take off my consumer hat. And as a worker, right, at 9 o'clock sharp, what do a lot of us do? A lot of us commute and go to work, right? We go to work. So we become like workers, like employees of an organization or part of an organization, or we become students in a school, right? So So we're gonna take a look at a video, right? So I explained just now how we became so sophisticated as consumers, but when we take on that 9 o'clock hat and we put on that worker hat, I want you to, this video is from a series called The Changing World of Work. So it kind of gives you, it kind of gives you an overview of how the consumer side of experience does not exactly reflect upon the business side.
The closer we looked, the more we realized that the way we work has not kept up with the rapid pace of change in the world.
The offices and cubicles we work in, the buildings that they're placed in, the software and the hardware that we use, they're really all designed for a world of information scarcity. But the world's really changed in the last decade, and we now live in a world of information abundance.
People are collaborating, they're communicating with friends, they shop online, they play games, they have this wonderful, rich experience of technology in their personal lives, and then they go into the office.
We naturally are beginning to look at our physical environments to have those types of performances. We expect them to be interactive, we expect them to be faster, we expect them to allow us to do things in a more spontaneous and intuitive way.
We've been running companies the same way since the Industrial Revolution, when we made them purely for the purpose of doing the same thing over and over at scale as efficiently as possible.
It was based on Ford and the production line. Ford's approach was about pure efficiency, speed of production, at lowest cost. All Fords were black because black paint dried quickest. That whole construct is a dead construct, really. It belongs to a previous era.
Okay, so one of the quote that I really want to emphasize and highlight again in this video is this. So, quote, people are collaborating, they're communicating with friends, they shop online, they play games, they have this wonderful, rich experience of technology in their personal lives. Just like how I just explained of our experience with smartphones, right? But then we enter the workforce, we enter the office. So at the consumer side, we have this, but then when you go into the company, you have this, right? Do you guys see the discrepancy here? There's a big discrepancy. You have this, right? Do you guys see the discrepancy here? There's a big discrepancy, right? Right? The way we work does not reflect the sophisticated beings that we have become as consumers. And if we continue to implement these work styles, we will not be able to survive the ongoing changes that is happening in the workforce. And here's some of the reasons why. In the workplace, we have mobile connectivity growing. We're expected to have 4 billion mobile connections in Asia by 2021. That's twice more than the number of mobile connections in Europe, right? So more mobile connections mean mobile workforce, also means the ability to use various devices anywhere you want, anytime you want. Now people are working from their tablets, their smartphones, their laptops. They're not sitting on their desk anymore, right? Even the professors are not just sitting in their research room and doing research. They're doing it at home, they're doing it overseas. And from the student's point of view, right, why are you bound to just within the campus? You could be just going back home and doing all the same work, exactly the same. So add that to the mobile workforce, right? 7 of the 10 workers in Asia will be working outside of the office at least once a week. What does that entail, right? It entails that people are not just, don't really need to be physically there in order to work, right? They could be virtually present in any location they want and get just as much done, right? This is the dynamics that we're seeing in the environment. But what really amplifies these two different environmental factors is this: the people who are going to make up the workforce going forward, right? So currently, 25% of Asian workforce is made up of millennials, right? But going forward, 50% of the global workforce is going to be consisted of these millennials. And what are the common characteristics of these millennials? I'm pretty sure all of you guys are very familiar with it, right? We are very tech savvy, and trust me, I'm a millennial myself, right? But I think I'm pretty good with machines. I think I know how to operate smartphones, and I think I know a little bit, you know, one or two or a couple of things about the cloud, right? Because everybody's talking about the cloud, right? So if you combine all that together, oops, sorry about that. So if you combine all that together, right, the old traditional way is definitely broken, and that model itself is not sustaining. So and then now let's look at the political environment, right? So in Korea, I'm not sure if all you guys are familiar. In Korea, there's a law that limits the number of hours for workers to work in a week. So they're only given 52 hours a week to work, right? And that's a political response to this international phenomenon of changes happening in the workforce, right? And how are the major companies, major organizations, right? Here I have the major conglomerates lined up, right? Responding to these political responses. Hyundai Motors, right? They're coming up with flexible work hours. Samsung, they're coming out with, working at home, right? And also, for example, LG, right? They developed a software where it automatically shuts down the computer after 6, which forces them to not be able to work overtime, right? And another one of the biggest benchmarks, right, would be SK. Recently, SK has been working with us, with Microsoft, and they have gone full cloud, which enabled them to, execute and actually feel what modern workplace is about, right? They're working at home. They're not limited to just the confined spaces in the office. They're working anywhere, anytime they want through the power of the cloud. So with these political, demographic, and environmental changes happening, right, I could definitely concur that this model needs to go, right? We all agree here, right? In order to keep going, in order to survive in this 2 billion job losing environment, right, we need to adapt and we need to change. And that is a simple truth that I tell my customers and that I really want to tell all you guys here today. So in order to combat this trend, what do we need to do, right? This whole change is happening, right? That means we need to change, but what? What do we need to change? How do we need to change? The answer is we need to develop a new way of work, right? A new way of working. The traditional model is broken, right? We need to be able to utilize the tools, the technological resources given to us to be able to perform at the best version of ourselves and utilize all those resources given. And trust me, we're all used to utilizing these tools, right? It's just that we just take it for granted now. Everybody uses this, right? I'm not trying to brag as a representative of Microsoft, but just literally everybody uses it. Like I can't deny it, right? So when Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, this email application, this productivity application are first released, right? People are so enthusiastic about using them, right? And now it's become literally just like smartphones, a part of our lives when we do work. Not even just work, when we do our personal assignments, right? But the thing is, at a certain point, we became lazy, right? Just like smartphones, when we lie on our beds at night and we download new applications and say, oh, this application is great, I might use it. And then you try another application, you delete it, right? That trial and error did not exactly correlate with what we do in the workforce, right? At some point, we stopped doing that. But the application did not give up on us, right? The tools, technological tools did not give up on us, and it's always been there. It's just that we just never noticed, right? It has continued to evolve by embracing the power of the cloud to be able to help us when we really need it, when we finally realized that we needed to change and we need to adopt a new way of work. It was made available and is currently available for all you guys to use, right? So Office 365 is, I think the simplest way of putting it is a set of collaboration tools to improve work efficiency and work effectiveness. So what does that even mean, right? Like Excel, yeah, it helps me work faster. PowerPoint helps me design slides. What does that mean, right? So I thought about what would be the best way for me to tell you guys about the capabilities that Office 365 brings. And I thought about, okay, why not just list out hundreds of different applications available, including Excel, SharePoint, Yammer, Exchange Online, all that. But then I figured that's not going to be very relevant, right? We are all sitting here today wondering, how can I utilize this piece of technology to make our work life better, right? How to increase efficiency. So I came up with a series of scenarios where, there's common scenarios that, I learned, and also from my personal experience, through the interaction with customers, right? The common scenarios in which workforces are experiencing today, and they believe they need to change, right? So let's take a look. Endless emails, right? Professors, faculty members, and even some students. You guys get emails, right? It's the main means of communication. And surprisingly, it's a means of communication that I believe is never going to go away, at least for a long time. So according to a study, on average, information worker receives about 90 emails in a day. 90 emails. And as sad to say, Microsoft loves sending emails. They always CC me into emails that I really don't care about. They really do. And it's when I wake up in the morning, I have over 180, 200 emails in my inbox. The reason is because Microsoft headquarters is in the States, and they work when I sleep. So when I wake up, I already have the 90 emails in my inbox, right? So when I wake up, I'm already stressed. I'm always already going through my inbox, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, when am I gonna reply to all these emails? And I look at the clock, and it's already 6, right? The whole day went by just from me replying to emails. So if you think about, if there's a way, right? If there's a way for somebody or something to prioritize my emails, how wonderful would that be, right? It would definitely increase my work efficiency, allow me to use my work hours more efficiently. So in the Outlook, in the Office 365, we offer Outlook email system, email solution, where the AI within the Office 365 filters the emails out to the most important and the pertinent to you, and the most irrelevant and something that you could just deprioritize compared to the others. And it puts it into the most important ones into the focused inbox, and the others into the other inbox. So how does the AI know? What's the most important email as a worker? My managers, right? What's the most important mail from student? Their professors, right? It filters it out. The AI knows and puts it in the focus inbox, which allows you to know, okay, I need to reply to these emails first. But how about the other emails? They will filter out ads, right? Or newsletters. And how do AIs know? Because most ads literally says ad in their emails, right? Newsletter, it literally says newsletter. But the thing is, if they do accidentally filter out an important email that you believe that you need to put in the focus inbox, machine learning, you just let the AI know, right? And the AI learns and keeps adapting to your convenience. So next scenario, busy colleagues, right? So the thing about working in companies in Korea, there's a lot of challenges. And one of them is being a junior in a company puts you in a position where you need to arrange meetings. It's inevitable. But how do many companies in Korea arrange meetings? If you guys are familiar, right? The junior would literally call every single one in their team and say, hey, when are you available? Hey, when are you available? And literally, they spend the whole day arranging meetings. Let's take a look here. So excuse the Korean, but so the person is literally saying, set up a meeting. Oh, I think the sound is out. But yeah, so this guy is literally calling, right? Calling everybody. So if you utilize the Outlook email solution that we offer in Office 365, you could just stop calling your colleagues, right? Because it allows you to check their availability just by checking their calendar, right? It allows you to see, and then the AI actually books an open time for you where 5 people are the most convenient and most open. It actually suggests it for you. And another additional feature would be, for example, calendar sharing, right? I could share my calendar with my colleagues. I could share my calendar with my professor or among professors. But now that becomes a matter of privacy, right? Some people don't want to overshare, and some people don't want to share where I am at this moment. You could simply just mark it as free or busy time, and it will just block out a chunk of time, right? Another one would be responding to meeting requests, right? So if you could set up a meeting, right? In order to set up a meeting, you need to send out a meeting request, right? And then the thing is, you need to accept. You could reject, or you could send it as a tentative. So there's a thing in Microsoft where it's okay to reject your boss's meeting. Like literally, I could say reject, I ain't going, right? But the thing is, we require everyone to respond fast because the meeting organizer needs to know, can this meeting go on without you, or does it need to be rescheduled, right? So at least put that on the responsibility. Put that responsibility on the responder, right? But then you are welcome to reject or accept at your own convenience, right? So next one, where is everyone? So one of the things that being as an account executive, right? I'm always going everywhere. I'm here in Incheon today. I'm actually going to Daejeon tomorrow, and the Busan the day after that, right? Which limits my days in the office, right? So I'm literally everywhere. But then if my boss or my colleagues want to have a meeting with me, right? Like, how am I gonna do that, right? I can't physically be there. So we resort to virtual meetings. So if you utilize a collaboration tool, it's a collaboration solution called Microsoft Teams, you could host and proceed with virtual meetings anytime, anywhere. You could do video call virtual meetings, or you could just simply share your deck and host a virtual meeting and quickly proceed from there. So you don't really need to be physically present in order to get the work done, because you have all the tools that will enable you to do all the things that you can in a virtual space. So additional features on Microsoft Teams here. You could also sign in on mobile, right? For example, when you're driving, I drive a lot since I'm going everywhere, and I join a meeting, I get the same experience on my smartphone as I would get on my desktop, my laptop, or my tablet, right? Another, PSTN phone conference. So I'm pretty sure a lot of the professors or faculty here have a chance to go abroad, right? But then they worry about roaming fees, right? Change my use to them, right? That's pretty expensive and everything. But if you resort to Microsoft Teams, it's all free, right? Because it is through the network. It is through the network, and you're able to connect via network that Microsoft provides. The next one is recording capabilities, right? So there are times when you do meetings via network that Microsoft provides. The next one is recording capabilities, right? So there are times when you do meetings, and people will come up to you and say, "Hey, did you really say that in the meeting? I swear I heard you hear that. I swear you said that in the meeting." If you record the meeting, you say, "Hey, look, I never said that. Just check out the recording." And also, let's say you missed the meeting. The person would grab you and say, "Hey, can you tell me about what happened in the meeting?" That eats up your time now again, right? It's very redundant. So you could say, "Hey, look, this is a recording of the meeting. Take a look for your reference," right? So utilizing virtual meetings and the capabilities that Microsoft Teams, which is part of Office 365, provides, you could facilitate the meetings and make sure those meetings are followed up as effectively as possible. And this is actually an interesting video that I have here. So does anybody know who this guy is? Somebody know? Anybody know? Yes. You know? Okay, so I'm guessing you know because you know, right? So he is the reporter from BBC a while back, like a year or two ago, right? And he was reporting in front of this whole international screen, right, where it's getting broadcast live. And what happens? It's the little cute babies in the back going crazy, right? Going crazy. So Microsoft thought, hey, what are the chances of this happening, right? Surprisingly, it was very high. So this is what they created.
I just want to check in with you guys and talk about part of those scandals.
In Microsoft Teams, powered by AI, the AI in Office 365, it recognizes your face, facial recognition, and blurs the background itself. So the people in virtual meetings could focus more on you and the main important content rather than whatever is happening in the back, right? I always thought that was very interesting. But how about paper meeting logs, right? So I'm sure professors have meetings all the time and students have team projects all the time when you guys meet up, right? But what do people do? I mean, sure, they type it up now, right? I still see a lot of people typing up. But when you go to the workforce, there's still people writing things down in meetings. And what do they do? They have to type it back up, right? Create a meeting log, send it via email, right? But the difficulty comes is when somebody, that one person, right? That one person starts drawing, right? Somebody just starts drawing, like, all right, I don't want to, replicate what I wrote, so I'm just gonna use my computer when I do meeting logs, right? So you open up a notepad and you start typing it away. But somebody just starts drawing in the middle of a meeting. What do you do then, right? So you take out a piece of paper, you draw the diagram, take a picture of it, email it to yourself, attach it to the electronic version of the meeting log, send it, right? Inefficiency there. Let's take a look. So this guy is actually going on a vacation after attending an important meeting, right? And like you saw, he literally wrote it down in his notebook, in his notepad. And let's see what happens. So 3 days later.
수대, 그 휴가 중에 미안한데 지난번에 나 대신 그 회의에 참석했었잖아.
Okay, I can't send it to you because I left it back. Right?
아니, 하나도 기억이 안 나요.
예, 죄송합니다. 워낙 복잡하고 중요한 내용이라 자세히 좀 기억이 안 나는데.
알았어요.
So if you have an electronic version of the meeting log, there's great convenience to it, right?
예. 그 원노트에 작성해 둔 게 있으니까 지금 바로 모바일 보여드리겠습니다.
그래, 휴가 중에 미안해요. 고마워요.
아닙니다. 네.
You simply press share and you send it right away in an email attachment.
새로운 일하는 방식.
So in Office 365, we offer a digital notepad, fully capable of being able to handwrite, draw diagrams, recognize pictures, put checklists, do anything you want. It's literally anything you could do, notepad, digital notepad. And the best part of it is that you get the same experience across all the devices out there, right? Whether it's tablet, whether it's smartphones, whether it's your laptop, right? Another additional capabilities would be the ability to record, right? So as I mentioned earlier about recording, some people kind of double take on what they said in meetings. So if you record during a meeting, there's a recording capability. You turn it on during the meeting, after the meeting, you share the recording and use it as a meeting. You share the recording and use it as evidence saying, hey, look, I never said that, right? Also, just what we saw in the video, right? You could simply just press one click. You could just press email page and email the meeting log directly to the attendees, right? You don't need to create a separate email, separate template to send it out. And lastly, the ability to share the notebook, right? So that meeting log, usually, like, I take care of the meeting logs, right? But that's not always going, I'm not always going to be there, right? I could be away in a vacation. I could be in customer meetings. That means somebody else has to contribute to filling out the notebook when the meeting is going on. So if you share the notebook, the whole notebook itself, somebody else could just jump into that same notebook and collaborate away without having to go through the hassle of, hey, look, can you share that notebook with me so I could write it down and I could give it back to you. But the problem is you can never recognize a handwriting, right, of somebody else's. Next one is very common, I think, among a lot of the office workers today, right? And it's still happening, even though I don't understand because this whole idea of co-authoring is very, very general now. But still, there's people working in companies where I would create a document, a weekly report, right? Then I would send it to my colleague, and he would fill out his part of it. That's version 2 already. And then the other colleague would fill it out. That's version 3. And there's version 4, there's version 5. And somebody else at the very end comes up, combines all the 6 different versions of a document, right? Write it up again in the same format, send it to the boss, right? That still happens. I really just can't grasp the concept when there's the ability to co-author is available. So this guy is, the boss is asking him, fill out a weekly report, right? Due in 5 days, right?
혹시 월간 보고 작성하셨나요?
D1. Yeah, that's me, by the way.
바로 보고 나서요. 근데 지금 바로 해드릴게요. 네, 빨리 좀 부탁드려요.
So this guy just about to die, right? Tomorrow is the turning in day. He has nothing going on. He has nothing filled out.
새로운 일하는 방식.
So the idea is you upload a document, right, on the cloud, which gives them the capability to co-author real time, right? It allows you to track this person who is working on a certain part of the document, right? It also tells you who is currently working on a document and where the changes have been made, right? So you don't have to go through like, hey, who changed that? There's no such thing as rendering. Hey, look, where did I change? Which version is that? You just keep one document, right? And you just keep editing it away, right? It's a new way of collaborating. And this is, I think, the most interesting thing about, or actually it's like the second most interesting thing about Office 365. But so there are times, I'm not sure if you guys could relate to this, but somebody comes up to you and says, hey, look, this document might be useful to you, right? Let's say you're working on a research project, or maybe you're working on an assignment, and somebody just gives you an extra document and says, hey, look, this might be relevant to you, right? And it turns out that's just exactly what you needed. So at that moment, you'll say, I didn't even know I needed this document, right? So Office 365 is equipped with AI service that lets you and recommends the documents that you never thought you needed. So what the AI does is actually it analyzes your connections, it analyzes your network, it analyzes who you interact with the most, right? Who you send the emails to, who you have meetings with, who you chat with, right? And it creates a network map inside the server, inside the system, right? And what it does is, within my network, if there's a document that, let's say, 5 out of 3 people, right, are looking at it, it probably means it's pertinent to you because the people you work with the most is looking at a certain documents, right? Also, it allows you to search, right? Let's say, oh, I think he had that kind of report somewhere, right? I think Rob had it, right? But, you know, Rob is away in Singapore. I don't want to call him. I don't want to, you know, pay the international phone call, right? So I would just go on Delve, right? And type it up, right? Type in a keyword, and it will tell me what kind of documents that he's been working on, right? And I could get a clue, and, oh yeah, there it is. I don't really need to ask. And the best part of it is you never need to call him, right? Also, it creates your own profile, right? Therefore, you have a network that you constantly rely on and constantly collaborate with, which allows you to go back and have a, you know, be able to fully utilize your resources when you need it. So animations and transitions. So I know there's not much animation in my PowerPoint slides or transition effects, right? But there's a lot of people out there, especially students, right, who would take those classes on PowerPoint designs, right? Just now, before I was coming, I saw this Instagram post, promoting PowerPoint animation learning academy and so on, right? But the thing is, like, the most important thing is not the animations, to be honest, right? Sure, animations are important, like it's great, but sometimes we forget what is most important, which is the content itself. We get so caught up investing so much time on making our things look pretty, right? That we forget what the most important thing is. So in one of the big companies, one of the conglomerates in Korea, the CEO actually put down an initiative within their organization to limit all PowerPoint slides to just one slide with no decorations. Why is that, right? Why? Because he knows that the most important thing is not to waste my workers' time creating something pretty for me, right? I want them to create something more pretty in the words and the work they do, right? So what if the Office 365 AI allows you to eliminate that process so you can focus on what you need to do? So Office 365 AI again, right, analyzes the content within your PowerPoint slides and recommends you PowerPoint designs that's most adequate to the content that's on the slide itself, right? So basically, if you take a look, it's just words, right? I literally just type words, enter, type words, enter, bullet point, that's it. And if you take a look on the left, it shows you all the designs that you could possibly just use, right? Just one click. The real problem, though, is the animations, right? You drag, set up the time, 5 seconds, you press again, you drag it over here. That takes ages, right? But what if I told you all that could be done by just pressing one button on the transition slides? We offer a feature called morphing in the Office PowerPoint within Office 365, which allows you to do this. This would usually take ages, right? This was just one click. One click, one click, one click, and so on. So usually this will require me moving these objects around everywhere, setting up times and everything, but this was done in just one click. That saves so much time when we work, right? And this I could relate to, right? So when I first joined Microsoft, right? When I first joined Microsoft, I was not very familiar with cloud, right? Like I was like, oh, I know cloud is something that's in the sky, something like that, some internet thing. So what I did was accidentally I deleted my my team's entire document library, like literally. So it was syncing, but I was like, oh, I don't want that to sync. I just press X. And a couple days later, my boss came to me, my manager came to me, hey, do you know what happened to those files? I was like, no, I really don't know. 2 hours later, my peer came to me, hey, do you know what happened to those files? I don't know what happened. I don't know, like, you find it. I don't know, I just joined. A couple hours later, my boss comes to me, I think there was somebody hacked into our system, right? It almost got serious. Because it was on the cloud, my boss comes to me, I think there was somebody hacked into our system, right? It almost got serious. Because it was on the cloud, I was fully able to recover all the files that I accidentally deleted, right? Just because the documents are uploaded in the cloud, it does versioning, right? Without us knowing. And it exists on the cloud. So basically, if you have versions, what does that allow you to do? Go back to the earlier versions when you need to, right? So, there's a lot of cyber attacks now. There's, WannaCry, there's hacking, there's ransomware and all that. So what happens when you get a ransomware, right? Are you just going to give up your machine? Are you just going to give up your work, professors? Or are you just going to give away your intellectual property just like that, right? Sure, people have it on USBs and everything, right? But do you really update your USB every single day you work on it? It's usually just on periodic terms, right? So what happens is that by putting your documents on the cloud, right? It allows you to recover any files uploaded on cloud up to 30 days, right? So for example, if there was a virus attack or WannaCry or some kind of hacking and all my files were locked and I can never access it, you just turn it back to 10 days ago and you get the 10 days ago version of your documents. But if you do that, you say, oh, I don't know which one's gone. I don't know what's gone. I don't know what's missing. It tells you, hey, look, if you recover it to this certain point of time, these documents are going to be gone. Are you okay with that? It lets you know because, like I said, the cloud keeps versions on the cloud. And another benefits of putting your documents on the cloud is easy sharing, right? I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are aware of that, right? And this actually is very, very directly related, especially me as an accounting executive. I don't want to go into my company physically and put in my document or my meeting log or customer meeting reports and submit it to my boss, right? That's already 2 hours right there, commuting, right? But if you put it on the cloud,
나 지금 외근 나왔는데 좀 빨리 끝내서 일찍 퇴근할 것 같거든. 어디야? 한잔해야지.
this guy's excited about Friday night out, right?
잠깐만. 오늘 사무실 들어오셔서 협력사 견적서.
And then the boss is saying, hey, look, send the quotation. Come into the company right away. There goes his Friday, right?
별거 아니야. 금방 알게. 새로운 일하는 방식.
So if you utilize the OneDrive, the personal cloud storage solution in Office 365, you could just one click and share all the files necessary at your own convenience. And videos, right? So this was an interesting find that I have. So a lot of executives in companies, a lot of students, a lot of professors, teachers, everybody, right? They often go to these sessions, right? Like, for example, they go to international sessions abroad, you know, study sessions and all that. And what they do is, if there's something interesting, what do? They take out their phone and they take a picture, right? Or if there's an interesting conference going on, they take out their phone, they record it so they could share it with their peers, or I could just watch it later, right? Well, the thing is, the problem with that is it's just video. And sometimes audio is not good, right? And sometimes you can't really see it, right? But what if I told you there's a video library in the Office 365 powered by the AI that lets you do auto scripting, right? It recognizes the person who's speaking, and also, if you have a script, what does that mean? Allows you to search, right? On Stream, which is a video library, content library service in Office 365, right? The AI recognizes the person's face in the video and tells you who it is. So this guy, is Satya, is just, just a regular guy, just owns Microsoft, right? Recognizes it. And it also tells you who is speaking where, right? So Satya is speaking in this time of the video, and two other people, Heather and two other people from Microsoft are speaking elsewhere, right? And on the far right, you see the script. The AI itself recognizes the voice and automatically created a transcript. So if you have a transcript, like I said, you could search. So I'm not going to listen to 1 hour. Actually, I shouldn't say that, right? I should listen to my CEO speaking. But honestly, I just want to search the most pertinent information in part of that speech to me. So I could just go to my transcript and type in, for example, Office 365. And I would just focus on that part of the video without going elsewhere. And this is rather simple, right? There's still, I don't want to bash on the host here, right? But there's still paper going on, right? To do surveys, there's QR code, right? But why do paper surveys, right? It's just a waste of paper. How are you going to tally that up? I'm sure, like right now, you guys have a QR code now, and then they're doing it online. But that's not always the case. People are still not familiar with QR codes, right? They are, but a lot of the hosts are still rely on paper surveys, even us sometimes, right? Even Microsoft sometimes too. When we do events, we have to hire people to tally up 300, 500 surveys, which is absolutely ridiculous, right? But if you use forms on Office 365, you could do all that, right? Just online, and it gives you direct results right away, right? It tells you the numbers, it tells you who voted, it tells you the answers, and it's just one click, right? You don't need to hire other person. You don't need to, get the junior on your team to say, hey, look, you're gonna sit here all night and tally up all these results, right? That's a waste of time. And some of the times when you work, and students too, and professors, everyone, at the end of the day, you sit there and say, hey, what did I do all day? And it's already 6 o'clock, right? And you wonder, okay, what did I do? There's a solution on Office 365 called Planner, right? Which lets you track the work that you're doing. Am I in progress? Am I late? Do I need to submit? Did I complete it, right? Also, from a manager point of view, right? For example, for professors, if you want to track your students' progress on a certain project, right? You could simply just manage it, right? You take a look and, okay, who's where in their projects, right? And the best part is, let's say there's 5 people in a project group, right? And let's say if you take a look, the red kind of indicates like everyone else has 2 different tasks going on, 1 or 2, and there's one guy, I can't actually see the name. I think it's that person with the 3 bars, right? You can see that that person is overloaded with work. So what do you do as a manager or as a professor to ease off the load and make sure all the work gets done? You move that work to somebody with just 1 bar, which is 1 task, right? Being able to manage that doesn't just increase your efficiency of managing students, right? It also increases the efficiency of the students, because trust me, the students are not going to say, oh, I got my work done. Give me extra work. No students are going to do that, right? So this is the most important feature that I think for Office 365. So at the end of the day, or just in general, I just think, right? I sit back, let's say 6 months later of doing some work, I sit back and say, hey, was I being very productive, right? But then again, before you even have an answer to that, you get back right to work, because you have work to do. But what if I told you, right, there's an AI that tells you whether or not you're being productive or not? So this is like his focus, concentration at work, the level of it. So when you're working, you get emails, right? Do this, do that, do that, do this. This is the best part. He has to go get coffee when he has to do work, right? He has extra amount of work, but he just decides to go get a coffee. So the AI analyzes how long it took you to respond to emails, how long you spent in meetings, right? And it actually gives you suggestions, right? Why don't you block out a certain time so you could just focus on work, right? So this is called My Analytics, right? It's an AI service provided through the AI of Office 365, Office 365. And this is actually what SKT is currently pursuing, right? Implementing to increase their work efficiency. So what this does is it analyzes your meeting hours, your email hours, your focus hours, and basically lets you know how much time you invested in that, right? And at the end, it also shows you who you collaborate the most with, right? And what kind of meetings can I cut out, right? Is this meeting really necessary, right? And it gives you that suggestion. And, kind of this is a more local case, right? As I explained earlier, there's a 52-hour workweek law here. But because of that, many organizations are so keen on monitoring people not working over 52 hours. So what they do is, even for us, Microsoft here, right? After 6, when you try to send an email to somebody after 6, after working hours, the AI actually says that my analytics actually tells you, is this really urgent? Do you really need to send this email right now? Right? So it kind of puts you on the spot, right? Kind of puts you in a position, it's like, oh, yeah, I'll just send that later, right? Not only does that protect your work-life balance, but it also protects the work-life balances of those people you work with. Next would be, WhatsApp, KakaoTalk, Line, WeChat, all these communication tools. Everybody uses it, right? I thought about, do I need to put like the competitor names on it? But, we're so familiar with it. We're all open about it. The problem with that is I see a lot of people in Korea or just, outside of Korea doing their work on these communication tools, right? Consumer communication tools. Not only is it unsafe, but the major problem occurs when Rob uses WhatsApp and I use KakaoTalk, right? And Jason uses Line and Sam uses WeChat, right? That's when the problem occurs, right? Somebody sends something to Kakao, but I didn't get it. Somebody sends it to WeChat, I didn't get it. You need a unified collaboration tool, right? So this is Teams. I actually mentioned this before earlier in the presentation, along with the virtual meetings, right? This is a collaboration tool which puts you in a very collaboration space for all your team members, right? It creates a thread of things, and you could post, you could upload documents so you could co-author, right? You could also upload documents so all your team members could see, right? You could also do surveys, right? You could also do polling and everything, right? It's literally a collaboration tool for everybody. Not only that, you could also chat, right? You could also create meetings. You could share your documents directly on the chat, which gets stored on the cloud. So in my presentation, I explained to you a series of scenarios, the old ways, right? The old ways that we are so used to and we are still doing. But as I mentioned earlier, at the very beginning of my presentation, I'm just here to speak the truth, right? The old needs to meet the cloud, right? And we need to be able to adopt the new ways of work going forward in order to literally survive in this ever so fast, quickly changing environment in the workplace. So Microsoft, right, proposes the best way to achieve that is by taking advantage of the tools that we made available for you guys to use, which is Office 365. And Office 365 is part of Microsoft 365. It's a complete cloud platform, right? It has operating system, it has collaboration tools, and it also has security for you to maximize your collaboration and get the best results. So let me end my presentation with kind of explaining why I decided to go with Future Workplace Survival Guide. A lot of these changes inside organization is not about whether they're going to be successful or not, right? It's not about getting the competitive edge so I could become successful, I could beat my competitors. It's actually about survival, right? If we don't change, and if you don't adopt new ways of work, whether you're a student, whether you're a professor, whether you're an office worker, whether you're an executive, if you don't have that vision, right, we're going to be part of that 2 billion job that's going to be wiped out in the near future. Thank you very much.